Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the SQ Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Steve Sales, and I'm joined today by a very, very special first-time guest, my friend, John Brach. John, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Couldn't be happier to be here, Steve.
I'm really, really excited. This is going to be so lovely. I have, so JB is on with me today to talk about the Odyssey. There's been a couple surprise developments today that I need to talk about before that, so you're going to have to just sit here and listen to me talk. But I believe that you are you definitely are the first person that I've had on to talk about a movie since I've like kind of revamped like my structure in talking about movies, because I used to do a little bit like movies and TV shows during COVID, but that was a very it's a different era of the S3 podcast. We've evolved a little bit since then, so this is gonna be really fun. JB he majored in film when he was at Notre Dame. He's been around the block a little bit, knows his stuff. I took one class of beginning FTT. Should have minored, honestly, as I've thought about it more.
We would have been happy to have you, Steve.
You and I would have had a ball, I think. That would have been just awesome. Of course, the one semester that I took FTT was during COVID, so we couldn't even use the movie theater, which sucked. Because, what is it called? The Browning?
Yeah, the Browning Cinema. Oh, what a great place to watch. It's no IMAX 70mm, but it's a nice place.
Of course not. Which we're going to get into, by the way. Stay tuned. First thing that I want to talk about really quickly before we get started. LeBron signed with the 76ers today. I have to talk about it. Sorry. Pretty cool. I don't like LeBron that much. I feel like I've been pretty upfront about that for a long time. But you know what? Not going to complain about this one. The 76ers had a couple needs, most of which was they needed someone to play power forward consistently. They needed a secondary ball handler to take some of the pressure off of Tyrese Maxey. They needed someone who can rebound and someone who can defend when they feel like it, because I'm not going to pretend like he's at 40 years old. He's playing defense like John Brach was in our intramural league. LeBron does all those things. He certainly, I don't think he's prime LeBron anymore, but I don't think the Sixers team needs him to be prime LeBron. They just need him to do some of these very specific things. We'll see how Jaylen Brown feels about that. I don't know. Could be a few too many cooks in the kitchen. Who knows? My initial impression, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to a year of LeBron in Philadelphia. John, any thoughts?
It should be good. No, I'm just gonna say I'm happy for Drew and Megan. I found out from Megan Alexander's Instagram, so shout out to her for posting that.
Shout out to Swag Money. Play the song. That's my final statement on that. I also, really quickly, I saw the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie today. Did you watch that cartoon growing up when you were a kid?
I watched the cartoon. I haven't seen the movie, though.
Yeah, well, it literally just came out this weekend. And it's a whole big thing. It was originally going to be released in theaters, and then given all the recent changes in Paramount, they just decided to release it on streaming. But they do want awards consideration for it, so they did a token, I think it's a 5-day release, in one theater in Los Angeles and one theater in Times Square in New York City. So I went today and saw it. A brief overview, it was definitely, I think it would have been best suited to be a TV show, because I think the scope of the story that they chose was pretty... I liked the themes and everything that they were going for, but it's just like two hours is not enough to tell like the full story that they want to tell. But at the end of the day, they had a budget of like a high budget for the animation, and that definitely showed. And I mean, as someone who loved that cartoon very dearly, if I watch Aang dispel a tornado, like I'm having a good time.
I'm putting that one on my list.
Yeah, please do. All right, so JB and I are here today to talk to you about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, which is the probably won't end up being the biggest movie of 2026, but I think you can make the case that it might end up being one of the 3 or 4 like most culturally relevant. I mean, for sure. I loved it. I had a great time with it. John, at a minimum, liked it quite a bit. He's here talking about it. I can't imagine he'd be here otherwise. Which, he doesn't have to like it, but I think he does.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, why don't you just really quickly just give me like a 2-sentence overview of like what you liked about the movie?
I think, we've talked about this some, Steve, but I think it pulls out exactly what Nolan loves to do and he's about. I mean, I think you maybe get a sense that he's worked it into some of his other films and had this on his list for a while. And I think it takes you out of your everyday world and has that true mythical experience to it, and that's what I loved about it. Like his other movies do that, but when it's the Odyssey and it's a Nolan movie, takes you
What
away.
a way with words you have. That's like the perfect way that you could have said that. So I've looked into some of the production side of it, just kind of trying to tell a little bit more of a story here. And by doing that, I mean that I looked at Wikipedia and then like one or two other articles after that. But when Christopher Nolan finished up Oppenheimer, which I'm going to talk about in 2 seconds, he and his wife Emma Thompson were trying to figure out what the next movie was going to be. And ultimately, they settled on the Odyssey. And the big reason that they decided on it and kept pushing for it so hard to get as big of a budget as it did is they kept saying that the Odyssey is a foundational story. So many of the myths, legends, just general stories, fantasies, interactions with gods that, existed in the proceeding 2,700 years since the Odyssey was written, all come from the Odyssey, the other similar epics like it. So the way I want to kind of open this is just setting the stage for this movie getting introduced to us in the first place. Oppenheimer comes out in the summer of 2023. Did you Barbenheimer? Did you do both,
absolutely.
or did you just do one? Yeah,
I did both. Okay. Same weekend, not same day. So
yeah, okay. Haggy and I were in South Bend. It must not have been that long after you were there for the 4th that one time, if you remember that. We did Barbie first, and then we went to O'Rose for lunch, and then we went to Oppenheimer after that.
Barbie first.
Phenomenal.
I did Barbie second. I would say Barbie first was probably the better way to do that.
I liked it just because, like, if Oppenheimer had ended on the note that it did, and then I had to go see another movie after that, exactly. I don't think I would have had it, like, emotionally. I would have been like, oh, God. Like, I came out of that movie, I'm like, we are so screwed. And, like, a great way, but I was just like, man, like, it's grim. Anyway, so Oppenheimer is inherently kind of a, like, if you had said, like, oh, Christopher Nolan's going to make a movie about Oppenheimer, like, you kind of would have laughed and been like, that doesn't really make a ton of sense. Oppenheimer is a biopic about a nuclear scientist. Half of it is in black and white, and there's really only one, like, action scene. And does not really seem like Nolan's typical thing, does not seem like something that audiences would be drawn to, kind of inherently. And yet it makes almost $100 billion. I think it was like 975, and it swept the Oscars. I'm struggling to think of something that it did not win. It just killed. It's we're going to talk about this a little bit. It's my personal favorite Christopher Nolan movie. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And again, the audience has really responded to it too. So he goes out of the Odyssey, which we just said. That was like a big thing for him. Swords and Sandals epics have not really been particularly popular from a critical or professional level in some time. I mean, the last ones that I can think of are like Prince of Persia and not Clash of the Titans. It's Gods of Egypt, something like that. Those are
Clash
two very
of the Titans
different things.
Is a good one too, though.
Yeah, well, that was a little bit ago, I suppose. that was a little longer ago than recently. But so we've got the Odyssey, right? Which is, again, like, not much has been accepted into, cultural norms like that in some time. And yet, critically acclaimed. Like I said, I loved it. You really, really enjoyed it. And it is, as of now, it made $123 million in America in its opening weekend, which is the second biggest opening for him behind The Dark Knight. And it has, as of right now, before this second weekend has even started, it made $364 million. Well on pace to make $1 billion. Not bad, right?
The people want the big screen.
The people want the big screen. It just really, anecdotally, it feels like a true event for a lot of people who don't always watch movies in theaters. So I don't know if you can attest to that, but it's definitely like, I have a lot of people that I know that don't watch movies and don't get caught up in it, that just kind of ask me sometimes, like, oh, what's this thing? But they've already come to me and they're like, did you see the Odyssey?
And even as someone who enjoys going and watching movies and enjoys analyzing movies, I can count on one hand the number of times I've gone to a theater in the last probably 2 years. And this is one where, I think a lot of people who are into movies, and even those who aren't, had it marked down on the calendar and knew it was coming and planned to go see it. And it's that kind of movie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like, it's been fun listening to a lot of people talk about this, because I very much, this is now going to be my 3rd year in New York City. I am completely aware that I'm in a bubble in terms of, like, hearing about some of this stuff. Like, Lincoln Square has the only 70mm IMAX theater in New York. So I went to go schedule a showing for that because I've seen it in standard. Why would I not also see it in IMAX, right? At this point, like, also with AMC A-List, it doesn't cost me anymore. It'd be stupid to not do it. So I looked last Friday. The soonest opening that I could get, and this is what I picked because I didn't know if I was going to get a seat ever, is next Friday at 2 a.m. That is literally the only open seat that I could find in the next 2 weeks. which, like, that's New York. That makes sense to me. Like, that's just, like, people are going to go crazy about something like the Odyssey. What shows, again, I think what the zeitgeist that Nolan has been able to, or the level that Nolan has been able to reach in the zeitgeist. I went to, have you ever heard of Watertown, New York? I wouldn't think so. God, no. No, it's in the middle of nowhere. I went there last week, opening weekend, and there's nothing in Watertown, New York. There's an army base, nothing else. Apologies to anyone that's listening to this Watertown from New York. I'm sorry, but there's not much going on there. Entire, 3 different theaters were just flooded with just random people just coming in to see the Odyssey. I think it speaks a lot to kind of, Nolan is the titan in the industry right now. Like, Nolan is as much of a franchise as anything else that we have right now in movies, and I think that's pretty cool.
And I'm sure we'll get into it, but people want to see those movies. They tie together, like you're saying, as much.
Yeah,
as
and I mean, he's just made so many beloved movies that, you know, have been really good. So I actually would love to hear your top 5 Nolan movies, either before or after the Odyssey came out, because again, he's got so many movies that people have responded to really well in his unique flair.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking after the Odyssey came out, maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but I might put Odyssey at the top of that list, because I think it feels to me like this is one, I mean, we kind of alluded to it, that feels like it was at the top of Nolan's vision board almost. And I think a lot of people are saying there's aspects they didn't like here or there, but I think as a holistic movie, it does what it's supposed to do. And it wasn't a moment that I didn't enjoy it. Below that, I mean, again, I'm probably at the recency bias, but, you know, Oppenheimer.
We love recency bias.
I think it's got I think that's a good close second for me. I think, you know, we'll probably talk a lot about it, but I think there's some strands you can draw between those two movies.
100%.
You know, I don't know if people will give me crap or not for putting Batman at number 3, but enjoy that there.
Which one, I guess, is the question.
Dark Knight Rises, my man.
Okay. Rises. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that one.
Wow. All right.
I was a pretty big fan of Tenet, so I would put that as a close one there. I don't know what I'd round out my top 5 with, so maybe I'll leave it open.
That's fine. That's fine. Leave it at 4.
Can't give me any crap for that.
Did you see Tenet in theaters?
No, I saw Tenet at home. So that's what I'm saying. And then that was a little older, but there aren't that many that really draw, I think, most people out to the theater these days, like most Nolan movies do.
I think that Tenet is Tenet's a really nice testament to like the pull that Nolan had, because even at the height of COVID, like Tenet came out, that must have been like summer of 2020, something like that. Like nobody was going to movie theaters or anything, and it still pulled in like $350 million, which in COVID, like that might as well be $1 billion. That's that's insane.
Oh yeah.
I saw it on my laptop, but
that's probably where I watched it too. You know, I try to skip over
those
COVID years, but another great Robert Pattinson performance too.
Absolutely. So I would personally give my top 5, going from 5 down to 1. I would have the Inception is pretty cool. I think that's Nolan spectacle, kind of. That's what started this whole thing off after The Dark Knight, right? Then I would probably put Odyssey 4th, which I would say, like, I loved the Odyssey. And sometimes I think people, the way that they rank and they like review things, the scale almost gets a little warped, where like if I say that I had the Odyssey 4th, they're like, oh, that means you didn't like it? And I go, no, not at all. I loved it. I just think that he's made so many other things that I've also loved so much. Like I remember, I don't remember what movie it was, but one of my friend Liv, texted me after I ranked something like a 3.5 stars out of 5. And she's like, oh, so it wasn't good? I was like, no, it was good. I gave it a 7 out of 10. What do you mean it wasn't good? Like I liked it. I had fun. But some people just think about these things a little differently. But I love the Odyssey. I had it 4. I honestly think there's a chance it could get a little bit higher, because as I've been a couple more days removed from the movie and I've really thought about some of these things, I've grown even more fond of it. So I think after potentially seeing it in IMAX, assuming that I don't fall asleep because it's 3 a.m, I could have it a little bit higher. And then at 3, I would go The Prestige. Love The Prestige. I think that was actually might have been my first Nolan movie outside of the Batman movies that I'd seen.
Interesting. Maybe that's why I put Batman where it's at for me. But Prestige, that's an interesting take to me, Steve. But it's one of those ones that's foundational. Maybe but I'll let you keep. We
can talk about it another time. We'll talk about it another time. And then 2, I have The Dark Knight. Love The Dark Knight. And then 1, I have Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I think it just in basically every facet is a tour de force. Cillian Murphy's everything's amazing about Oppenheimer. I loved it so much. they're all great movies, though. Nolan is the guy for a reason. You know, he keeps making good stuff. So, all that to say, again, like, he is, you know, I guess it's not even really up for debate. He's the most powerful person in Hollywood right now, and there's a reason why that is. Like, he has very much earned that title.
I don't think anyone else could have
gotten
that.
I'm a little worried that John is... Oh, there he is. Oh. Keep going.
I don't think anyone else could have gotten a $250 million budget in 2026 out of the gate like Nolan could.
No, God, no. So, moving on, like, obviously we need to start talking about some of the movie and the story itself. We're 15 minutes in here. But The Odyssey is an adaptation of one of the oldest stories that we have. I've talked about this on a podcast before, and you and I have had this conversation to some extent offline, but I would love to hear your opinions on, like, what makes an adaptation, or, like, what is the role of an adaptation when you're converting not even something just from, like, an old story to the present, but also just from one medium to another.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is, and, you know, this is when you read a book first and then go see the movie, maybe a little bit different for The Odyssey, because I think a lot of people have heard it in various different forms and mediums before, but everyone has their own vision in their head. And the interesting thing about an adaptation is how in this case Nolan, but the director, the creator, chooses to do so. And I think that's what makes it, one, interesting for folks to go in and see, because it's maybe a little bit different than what you pictured, but I think that's what makes it the most interesting to see, especially in a case like this, but just across the board.
I would agree. I think that inherently something like this, you can't really adapt to, like, one-to-one. It's just not possible. I mean, for one, first of all, it's a myth, or mostly a myth. Like, you know, these things did not actually happen. So there's going to be some wiggle room to change things.
Spoiler
anyways,
right?
Like,
there.
Yeah, sorry. Like, the Odyssey was written in, I think, 600 BC, and the Trojan War, we believe, took place in 1200 BC. So this was already kind of ancient history when it was written, much less when, like, we're talking about it now in 2026. So there's just certain things that we don't really need to get into, but, like, there are certain changes or, like, artistic liberties that are taken that I cannot waste any breath getting mad over.
And it's about storytelling. Like, if you want to go to the movies to see a good story, if it's an adaptation, same rule applies. And I think you got to take some liberties to do that.
Exactly. And I think I do think, you know, to some extent with some of these stories, like, we do like a lot of these stories for specific reasons. So I think oftentimes if you do make a choice, I think that it is good to, like, if you're making a choice, it is in service of making the story better or fitting the way that you're trying to tell it. To me, you know, I think that it was really important to Nolan to focus his story very much on Odysseus' human nature and seeing the story through his eyes in terms of, like, you know, the changes that are being wrought by his deliberate choice to break Zeus's law, things like that. So that's why, you know, we see the gods, they're not people, like, they're just the supernatural forces that, like, they would show themselves to him as, you know. I like something like that. I think that works. Also, again, like, we have 3 hours to tell this story. He didn't even make this movie as long as Oppenheimer. He doesn't have enough time to do every single thing that happens in the story. And that's fine. He pared down the narrative in a way that I think perfectly suited the story that he wanted to tell.
Yeah, and I think that's what, you know, it is concise enough that you know, folks coming in with different backgrounds. You may have read The Odyssey, you may have just seen previous adaptations, but you got to put your own spin on it, which I think is what made this one so enjoyable to see.
Mm-hmm. Do me a favor, by the way. Turn your camera off just for a second. Not the audio. Let's see if that changes anything. Yeah. So one thing I also wanted to talk about as we're talking about kind of an adaptation, I think that the way Nolan set this up is kind of like it enabled him to use what I'm calling the peak Nolan style, where he is blending a lot of different timelines. He's kind of altering your perception of, like, what exactly it is you're looking at and how you're understanding the whole thing, and also just extremely fast editing. This thing is paced crazily. It's like Oppenheimer. Like, it never really stops. Which works for me. I know some people might get a little caught off guard for that, but I really liked it. And this is just kind of a tidbit that maybe the audience might be interested in, maybe not. I don't know. But some of this is, I mean, Nolan makes this choice. He has this editor, Jennifer Lame. They like to do these things together. That's how they like to tell their stories. But part of the reason why they do this as well is Nolan filmed the Odyssey entirely with a 70mm IMAX camera, which basically means like the film is ginormous. Like it's literally like this big. It's massive. It's crazy. And those cameras are so big that you can only fit 3 minutes worth of film in at one point in time before you have to stop and reload stuff. So it's kind of like they had some technical, I don't want to call it a limitation because, you know, look at what we got. But it really worked out well in terms of this is how Nolan wanted to tell his story, and this is kind of the time allotted to him anyways.
And it's shot on film, which I think is a important thing to call out, which changes a bit how you're approaching it in general, on top of, you know, having to break it up in the way that they did. But I don't think, you know, if you're going to sit and watch it in the theater, or, you know, you're waiting, you see it when it's at home, I don't think you should ever feel that you're going to have a moment to sit back and maybe relax in this one. It keeps you on your toes because of that.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I will say, so this kind of dovetails into, like, I didn't really have many things that I thought were wrong with the movie. The one thing that kind of caught me off guard from the beginning, and I could see maybe having put off some people, is it literally does, like, from the first second, it's like, go, 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 go. And they're doing that as they're basically introducing you to each of the three little timelines, right? We've got, I can't call him Matt Damon. His name is Odysseus. Odysseus is on the island with Calypso. We have Telemachus at home with his mother. And we have the Odyssey, like the actual, just the trip. And they're kind of establishing all three of these things at the same time with the same speed that they have at the end. And it definitely felt to me at first, I needed a little bit of time to kind of settle into both the rhythm and also just like everything that he was establishing at the same time. Now, I say that was also something that, like, by the end of the movie, I, like, did not care. And as I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh, like, I think if I watch this again, it would feel a little bit better to me now that I've seen the rest of it, as opposed to just, like, when I was first starting out and this was all I had seen. I don't know if you would have felt similarly at all, but I think, like, once... Sorry, go ahead.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts after you do see it a second time. Because I think, like, what it felt like to me when you sit down in that theater, and kind of what I enjoyed most about it, is they were introducing an all-star cast is what they were doing. They were setting the tone, setting the pacing, cutting back and forth with that great sound at the beginning, too. And just, boom, you know, I'll go with the actors' names, but boom, Matt Damon, boom, Tom Holland, boom, cutting back and forth between Travis Scott, you know, Anne Hathaway, Robert Pattinson.
Oh, yeah, right, yes.
And you are just, you know, all-star after all-star after all-star. And I think that did a great job of setting the tone going into the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny you mentioned Travis Scott, because I actually, like, there's so many incredible actors and actresses in this cast that was one of the ones that I think just, like, slipped by me. Like, I think I had known before that he was going to be in it, but I had forgotten. And then, like, one of the first things you see is Travis Scott just on the table. It's like, oh, all right. Like, and I thought he was great. Yeah, no, it was just, it took me, I'm like, oh my God, here we go. Travis Scott. So this is also something I wanted to talk to you about too, because we're getting to this point. There seems to be, it's pretty divisive, Tom Holland's performance. And I think it's kind of up for debate. I think you could also make the case that some of his performance depends on how you looked at the part. I'm curious what your thoughts were on Tom Holland in this movie.
Yeah, this is the one part where, you know, I think my glowing review is not quite as glowing. I don't think Tom Holland had a bad performance. I think a lot of people are either fully on board with it, fully, you know, against it. But I don't think he was meant to be the focal point of the film. And I think, you know, he did a good job of making sure he wasn't. I'm not sure if he maybe went a little too far on that to take it to the extreme. But when you're, you know, dancing in scenes with, you know, Matt Damon and Anne Hathaway and, you know, especially Robert Pattinson, and I would say especially John Leguizamo. My gosh, like, yeah, maybe the unexpected one there, but it's hard to play a role like that when you've got some powerhouses around you. So maybe some difficulty there that he didn't quite deliver how I'd want him to on, but I think he's still, like, overall a great movie, and he met the bar he needed to.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with you. It kind of, I would say, I think that Holland, ultimately, as I thought about it, was the focal point of, like, me adjusting to the language a little bit as well. Because by the end of it, I didn't really care that we were using slightly more modern language. Like, I wasn't really thinking about it, but it was definitely, again, something that I was noticing just because it's not like we are conditioned as, I don't know if it's just Americans or, people that consume any classic stuff. If we see representations of it in the past, it's typically used like a British accent. That's how we kind of think of it as like classy or formal in that sense. So I think that was honestly kind of my brain a little bit, just being like, wait, this isn't right. But then, 3 hours later, it's not wrong. It's just different. And Holland did feel a little weird to me at first, and there's definitely something to be said for. I mean, he is the least veteran of all of these actors and actresses, and he's also, I actually think he's probably a better actor than he typically gets credit for. He's definitely the worst actor and actress, like just generally, of all of these people. But again, I think he's a fine actor himself. But as I kind of thought about it, it kind of felt like he did exactly what Christopher Nolan was asking him to do. Like, Telemachus is supposed to be just kind of a kid that's, like, out of his element, like, not really ready to take what is he thinks he should be taking yet. I also think that Tom Holland has this good balance of, like, a boyishness. Like, he looks like he's a little bit younger than us, even though he's 30, right? But he also has a bit of a physicality that he was going to need in a lot of those, like, fighting and training scenes that I don't think many other people... I don't think there's many other actors in Hollywood right now that could toe that line. Like, maybe a Chalamet could have done something like that, but I don't know who else could do both of those things that Telemachus does throughout the movie. And I think that Holland was fine. I really don't think he was as bad as I was thinking he might have been for like 10 minutes.
And I think where he deserves credit is, as you said, he's supposed to be out of his element in this movie. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough line to toe when you're also, as you said, most inexperienced actor on it, and it's a difficult spot to be in. So I don't think he did it too much that he fully took me out of the movie, which, again, I think its purpose was to essentially take us out, a bit of escapism as Nolan loves. So I don't think he crossed that line, which is why I don't think he deserves any discredit for this film, but I don't think he was one of the standout performers.
I would agree. Yeah, very well said. So that's officially, that's pretty much all the beginning stuff. So I think at this point, if we want to talk about more like the rest of the movie, at this point, I would say if you have been listening to this and you still have not seen it and you don't want to hear anything else that happens from the rest of it, I would say this is your point to kind of dip out. But the rest of it, I think we might as well just kind of go on through. I think that so at this point, I would say all of the, like, anything that felt like me still getting used to the movie and like adjusting to what things became, that all stopped once we got to the Cyclops. And once we get to, what's his name, Polyphemus, I think, that's kind of when I was I'm like, here we go. Like, this is Nolan at his apex doing what Nolan does. Nolan, as the journey kind of really takes the stage as they all begin traveling to their different stops, this is when the spectacle, I think, really begins to take over. We saw some of the invasion of Troy, but we hadn't really seen like the biggest parts of it that we see at the end of the movie. So the Cyclops is really the first part where we see something really crazy, and we see again like the spectacle. I'm always going to come back to that. The Cyclops scream scared the crap out of me. I don't think I've ever heard a noise like that before. I don't know what Ludwig Göransson did to do that, but I like moved in my seat a little bit when I heard that the first time.
It's kind of the opposite of what Nolan did in his previous movie of cutting the sound at a pivotal moment, just over emphasizing the sound. But I think in a great way. But I agree with what you were saying of, I think when they arrive to that location and they're in the cave, it kind of starts to set the tone, and that's where I leaned up in my seat at that point, and I don't think I leaned back until towards the end of the movie, because it just the pacing and the interactions from that point onwards, and the locations even as they're moving quickly between, it just pulls you in.
100%. So I'm kind of curious for you, like, were there any of those, because there is a good chunk of the movie that is like, at that point it is, and this isn't a criticism, this is more a description of like Damon and the boys get on the boat, they go somewhere else, a couple of them die, they go back to the boats, and then they do the whole thing again. Were there any of those, any particular scenes that jumped out to you, like ones that you liked more than the rest?
I think, and I will not claim this is an original take at all, but I think
I hope we didn't lose them.
Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
There you go. That's upsetting. I won't claim.
Quickly, no.
Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, you're good. No, you're good. You're good.
I won't I won't claim that this is an original take at all, but I think when they go down to, I don't know if it'd be referred to as Hades, and it's
yes, I think that's how they refer to it at least.
Elliot Page's performance as Sinon at that point is what I think they slowed it down too. I'd have to go back and actually watch, but I think they slowed that part down compared to some of the other, getting on the boat, attack, losing some men. I think that kind of, you catch your breath as the audience, but also just the delivery of that interaction was spot on, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, no, that was my favorite part of the film, was the descent into Hades and going down on the beach. Because that was also, I think, that was the biggest marriage he did of like the way he was choosing to tell the story in a slightly more like humanistic approach, while also still dealing with the mythology of like, these are literally, we are seeing dead soldiers, being brought as shades or whatever you would to talk to Nolan or talk to Damon and tell him what is coming next. That was amazing. At this point, I should also mention just Agamemnon. There has never been, and I'm fully willing to proclaim this for the rest of time, a higher ratio of screen time for one character to looking as cool as possible than Agamemnon in this movie. He does nothing else, literally, than just stand there and look awesome. And I loved it, and it was great.
I will say, I'm on this trend of what keeps you in or pulls you out of the movie, and I think it was almost too much, in my opinion. It looked incredible, and if you pause the stills of when it's Agamemnon but from behind, beautiful shots. But I was like, this is almost too much for me right now when he first appeared on screen.
Yeah, I think it was probably something. I think that's more of an artistic choice that Nolan had to make, given the story he wanted to choose, because Agamemnon, it's not his story. That's the Iliad, if you want to get more Agamemnon stories. But even like, they just didn't have a ton of time if they want Agamemnon to be more of like an actual person rather than more force of nature that gets the plot going. So I think that's one of those things that, like, if you had unlimited time, yeah, you probably do Agamemnon as more of like a 3-dimensional character. And Benny Safdie gets to talk, and that honestly could have taken me out of it a little bit. I don't know if that would have been weird, but he's a funny guy. Yeah, but Hades, loved Hades. I would also say this wasn't my favorite because Hades was my favorite, but I think the Cersei scene was really interesting and felt kind of, I don't want to say against type, but I don't think that Nolan has done something that viscerally gross in a very long time, maybe in any of his movies. They're lingering on, like, that is a disgusting transformation, and that kind of hangs there for a while.
And I want to say, in reading about it after the fact, that they did a lot of that practical on site as well, rather than visual effects, which is, it almost makes me more disgusted to think about it in that respect. But yeah, I think it toes from, Nolan's normal psychological aspects into, towing the line of like a true horror scene there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I wrote down in my notes, revolting in a good way.
It's a good way.
Like I was just appalled as I'm watching this, and at first, I'm seeing a pig's butthole for a little bit, and then I'm also seeing her like shoving her elbow down Himesh Patel's throat. But it was just such a well done scene that I'm like, yeah, I can't look away, as much as I would love to do anything other than look at this right now. Like that's what I have to do.
That's the beauty.
Yeah, right. That's why he's the best. Anything else that stood out to you between like that point and when we get into the last hour that you felt like was worth discussing?
No, I think those two are definitely the big scenes, and I think it's just, we call those two out, but each stop along the way has a great focal point, and I think that's what makes it such an enjoyable film. Is the constant up and down keeps you in. So nothing else stood out, but that's, I think, because they were all so great.
Yeah. So okay, that's a good stopping point there then. So the third hour is really everything comes together, right? All of these plot lines start to converge. You really get to hammer home why Nolan chose to tell the story this way, what the emotional through line is. This is when all the action comes to a head. But I think for me, the most important thing to talk about here is this is when it really highlights how good so many of these performances were. For me, the two standout performances that you get throughout this movie are Anne Hathaway and Robert Pattinson. I think they both did a wonderful, wonderful job. You've seen, the beggars meme is all over the place. Because you know what? Robert Pattinson is great at just playing a really slimy, whiny scum of a human being. And Nolan performances can often be described as like, people will say they're wooden or like lacking in emotion. I don't really think that's a problem here. I think we saw a lot of like actors really imbued a lot of life and love into these roles, and it just tied everything together so much better.
Yeah, and there's too many moments to count in Robert Pattinson's performance where he's almost too far over the top, but in a good way, where he's pretending to be the good guy at times, or there's a great moment where he's spitting out his drink, I think, where it's like, this is crazy, but it emphasizes the character in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Just thinking about some of the other performances, you talked earlier about how good John Leguizamo was as Emmaus. He was really great in a much more like understated way a little bit. Like you have that scene where he recognizes that Odysseus is back, where, again, he can't react too much, but he's still conveying to you very clearly that he knows what he's seeing. Really well done. Damon, I think that it was funny when they announced him as the cast, because when I first heard that, I thought that he was going to feel too modern to me. Like, have you ever seen that meme about, it's funnily enough, the meme's about Ben Affleck, but it's like, you look at Ben Affleck's face and you're like, yeah, this guy just looks like he's seen an iPhone before. Like,
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
So, yeah. And I was a little worried that was going to be the case with Damon, but I think really in the third act really just took home, like when he's giving that monologue to Penelope, when they're between the barrier and he's really talking about his journey and, Odysseus' turmoil about everything that's happened. Like, he really sells that, does a really good job, I think, of imbuing that with the regret and just the shame that he feels throughout that movie. And it really, like, they talk about what happened at Troy the entire movie. We don't really see much of it, and I kept kind of wondering why they chose to show us so little of it. But then, as Damon kind of keeps going in this conversation, that's when it really kind of hit home to me. And I'm looking back, I was like, oh, I see these emotions that he's now talking about. I've seen them this entire movie. I just wasn't totally sure what that was yet. And I think that he did a really good job with that.
Yeah, agreed. I think we get to see Troy and the journey through his eyes, which I think was the goal, and I think delivered well on it. I agree. I think he did a great job in that monologue where he's talking to Penelope. My biggest qualm with the film, I will say though, is when he's referring to the Bronze Age in that and talking to her. It does snaps you out a little bit, a little too at your face on that one, but not necessarily against Damon's performance. That a little bit separate, but he did a great job throughout.
Speaking of that, though, I will say that was actually probably related to that is perhaps my favorite creative choice that Nolan took in this, in that the declaring that Odysseus and his crew were the Sea People, I thought was a nice little twist on like the actual history. We don't know who the Sea People were. In reality, they were probably just a lot of people that had lost their homes and lost their livelihood, and they were just trying to do what they could to survive. But I think that was a nice twist that, again, if you're going to make that change, it really enhances the story. I think it really furthers the narrative of what Odysseus and his crew were doing on their way back home to survive. And I thought that worked really well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't think I could put it in a better way than you did.
Did you read the Odyssey before this? Like, were you familiar with like the actual story itself?
Did I read it? No. Familiar with the story, yes. Which, I think probably goes into a number of folks who viewed it. But I'll provide that context of someone who did not read.
Yeah, I hadn't read it either. I've read and watched Percy Jackson, so I knew the broad strokes of like the monsters and Circe. I knew kind of that stuff, but I actually didn't know how this movie was going to end. I kind of assumed that Matt Damon was going to die in Penelope's arms. So I was like, oh wow, I was kind of surprised they let him live in this one. That was so that was nice. I don't know what you were expecting at that point.
They played that,
or if you knew specifically how it ended.
They played it that way. I did not know how it was going to end, and I mean, I also think back to the adaptation point. We don't necessarily know how Nolan is going to end it either, until watching it. But I didn't know, and they definitely played into with arrows sticking out of his back.
No, we lost you. Until what?
No, Steve.
He'll be back.
It's crazy because I can see you. And
Well,
hear you.
Until we get JB back here, I think that something that has really, I don't know how I want to put this into words. The final scene is another really great example of Nolan doing his thing, where he's kind of cutting all over the place, where he's got Matt Damon in the main room, right? He finally does the bow plucking again, which, by the way, shout out to Ludwig Göransson again. Really great musical cue, and just like a really cinematic way to show this bond that he has with his bow and with his family that can recognize all of these things. Just a really great creative choice that I don't know if a lot of directors would have necessarily done. Because I think if you do it wrong, it probably could take you out of the movie a little bit. But so, you have Matt Damon fighting these people, intercut with Robert Pattinson also just yelling at people to get various different weapon types, which is hilarious. And another part of, like, Pattinson just does this so well. And then you also have Tom Holland in the upstairs also trying to deal with that guy who's tossing weapons down into the ceiling. And it's all happening at the same time. It's so chaotic. But Nolan is able to kind of do it in a way that logically makes sense to the viewer, in that you are aware of everything that is happening. I don't think you're necessarily feeling that lost while it's going on, because they just do a good job of kind of centering you, the viewer, throughout this whole thing. Hopefully John's back by now.
I'm here.
John, if you have any thoughts on kind of just like the ending and how this all ties together, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Well, I think I agree with what you were saying of, keeping you centered.
Or he might just be cooked. This would be upsetting.
You
know what? If he can hear me, he'll just start talking again, and that's how I'll know he's back. But I'm just going to keep going otherwise.
Can you hear me now?
I love this movie a lot. Like, I really did. And as I've thought about it more, I've loved it more, because the last half hour where they're really kind of digging deep into Troy, and they show you more of Troy and how brutal and sadistic it all was, and just kind of what the ultimate betrayal was of breaking Zeus's law by using the Trojan horse to begin with, I thought was really great. And it makes a lot of the first hour or so better, because you're now provided the context through which all of these characters are acting that you just didn't have in front of you because they hadn't shown it to you yet. And I thought that was really great. So kind of with that, and again, if John comes back and he wants to butt in here, he and I both talked about this a little bit, and he's probably got a more unique take on it than I do. I see a lot of similarities between this and Oppenheimer. I think that this is very much a spiritual, either sequel or prequel, if you will, to Oppenheimer, in the sense of, with one move, with one decision, Odysseus destroys trust between people completely. He violates the inherent hospitality that is supposed to be in place because of Zeus's law. This whole movie has been telling us this whole time, they see gods in normal people all the time. The whole thing is, you need to treat people the way that you would want to be treated, because what if this person is Athena, just randomly strolling along, and you mistreat her, and then she can start punishing you. She can ruin your life because of that. You are supposed to treat people with goodness, with kindness. And that's now out the window because Odysseus did this. And Odysseus did it not out of cruelty or malice. Maybe Agamemnon would have done that, but Odysseus does it because they've been there for 10 years. His men and everyone, they are sitting there, they are starving, they are just bored, they're dying, and they want to go home. They want to be with their families. He's not doing this because he hates the people of Troy. He is doing this so that they can go home. Which, again, is that the best excuse? No, probably not. But, again, Odysseus feels that regret. He feels that shame throughout this entire movie. The movie ends with Odysseus saying, I fear that people won't learn from my mistakes. The idea that maybe people see the tragedy or the horror of the Trojan horse and they go, we can never do that again. We need to respect each other. We need to trust each other. And then you go to Oppenheimer. Robert J. Oppenheimer creates the nuclear bomb, creates a weapon to destroy any of us within the blink of an eye, not out of malice, but to end the war. Both A, to make sure that the Nazis don't get this, and also to end the war as quickly as possible. That's the rationale. And what happens after Oppenheimer in real life, but the Cold War? How can we, or the Soviets or anybody, how can we trust each other when we have this capability to wipe each other out in our hands? Think about the two ending scenes of both of these movies. You have Oppenheimer ends with, my God, I was so, I walked out of Oppenheimer, and I was kind of despondent, because it ends with, if you remember, missiles are erupting out of the sky all over the place, lighting the atmosphere on fire. The world is burning. The world is destroying itself because we can't help ourselves. And if you go to the Odyssey, again, I fear they won't learn from my mistakes. And they're showing the Trojan horse on fire, burning. The city of Troy is burning. People are dying because trust is gone. We have betrayed the trust of the Trojans, and they are paying the price for that. And I don't think that Nolan has exactly had the most positive view of humanity in the last 10 years. Or at the very least, I think he's wary of the dangers that can come by, even just from a couple men and their decision-making. And I think that's really cool. And I'm curious to kind of see what Nolan does next in that regard, because these are pretty similar movies in that sense. Nolan is wary of the capabilities of man, I guess is kind of the way that I would put that.
And if you can hear me,
I'm not sure if John is back yet. If he is welcome to jump in here.
Can you hear me now, Steve?
I worry that moment has passed.
Oh. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah. Well, anyways, that's the Odyssey. The Odyssey is wonderful. It's a great movie. I'm so glad that I was able to see it in theaters with a lot of my friends and just a lot of people that were super engaged in it anyways. Really glad to have JB on here too. He's a really insightful guy, knows his stuff, always great to talk to, just generally, but also, again, with movies, he's got a lot of really valuable insights. So I was happy to have him on. We will be coming back pretty soon. Actually, this summer is going to be pretty regular with stuff, mostly because there are going to be a lot of movies, like Spider-Man comes out next week. I'll talk about Spider-Man. But also, NFL and college football have come back up, so I will be doing a lot of that stuff really consistently. Oh, he's back! He's back! Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
There we go.
I don't know where you left us totally. I did just kind of wrap some of it up, but I'm happy to go back a little bit.
Here's the great part, Steve. I could hear exactly what you were talking about the whole time. You just could not hear
Oh,
me.
Really? Oh, that's so tragic. Oh, no.
But it happens. It happens.
Well, all right, so let's go back to this then really quickly. I'm really curious to hear your takes on we talked about the links between Oppenheimer and Odysseus. What did you see in that sense?
Yeah. And in hearing what you said, Steve, I think that the piece of selfishness there, and I think we're a little bit on Nolan's soapbox, and that's what we're listening to. And I think it's the selfishness of Oppenheimer trying to find the solution first, and the selfishness of Odysseus wanting to get home after 10 years that leads to that decision and that action of the Trojan horse and the bomb, which, again, I heard you draw the strings there. I think we're talking the same thing when we're talking the Trojan horse and the bomb, and I think that's what Nolan wants us to take away. And I think it's the essentially tearing of social fabric that all of us are probably a little more familiar with the story of related to Oppenheimer, but I really appreciated and also maybe a little bit not how much he hit the nail on the head with it in the Odyssey too, of really hammering home that message, which I think he wants every person walking out of that theater to fully understand without missing a single seat.
Agreed. I think about, when they finally show, I can't remember if this is when he's still talking to Penelope or if it's after, but it must be when he's still talking to Penelope, when you see the priestess, who is Zendaya, as we finally find out that Athena has manifested the form of this priestess that was, cut down in front of Matt Damon. And when they decapitate her and the head of the statue of Athena hits the ground at the same time, I felt that thud on a more emotional level of just ugh, man, this is just not good, right? The things that we are capable of doing and the things that the way that Nolan, the disgust I think with which Nolan views that was really palpable.
And it's a unique way of making, the movie takes you out. The movie takes you out of the real world for a moment, and that thud and that, again, you talked a little bit about the scoring and the film as a whole, but it brings you back in a very real way too.
Agreed. So I don't know if I think you were gone for this part, but I was waxing poetic about how insightful you are and how much fun it is to have you on here. Any last overall thoughts about the Odyssey that you need to get off your chest?
One, I'll say you're too kind and you're hyping me up much more than I deserve, but I appreciate that, Steve.
Stop.
I think my thoughts are, one, go see it. It's worth the nearly 3 hours of your day and of your week and your year to go see it. It is bringing us back to what the movies should be and were before COVID and were before streaming took over a bit too much. And I think it's well worth investing your money and your time and going back into seeing that.
Agreed. I don't know. You probably aren't too familiar. I have like a really dumb and like arbitrary rating scale that I like to use for these movies because I like to think about it more from the context of like talking to my friends that don't care about movies as much. Because this is Avatar today was the 27th movie in theaters I've seen this year. Like I see more than everybody else that I talk to. Like I always am just going to talk about it from the context of like here's a movie that I really liked. I think it would be great if you saw this. We talked about it, had a good time. So typically the way I like to do it, I rank it either on a don't bother. You're not missing much. Go see it. This is high-end entertainment, or this made me feel things. And the Odyssey made me feel many great emotions. Positive, negative. Negative in the sense of, like, I feel the dread that he wants me to feel. I feel the horror. Like, I feel very strongly what I think Christopher Nolan is trying to get me to feel in this moment. Could not be more positive about this movie. It's awesome. It is so much fun. It's an event. Like, you and I are able to talk about this. We have a lot of our other buddies who don't always see a lot of movies that we get to see. And they all saw it. And it's great talking with them about it when, they're behaving themselves. And that, yeah, it's just really awesome. A couple other housekeeping notes. So I graduated 3 weeks ago. And I've always said before that this podcast is very much, my vision for it was kind of translating the more in the weeds stuff about like football and movies, like two things that I love and spend all of my time really consuming, and distilling some of that into a way that people that are interested in some of this stuff but don't want to devote their whole lives to it, like giving them a different perspective on it while still being something that they can consume and not feel like they're being drowned out or that like they just don't understand what's going on. And I guess I'm going to come off as like I'm just bragging here, but like I had a lot of people at my graduation and people that are probably going to listen to this that came up to me and they said like, hey, like I really love the podcast. Like, please keep making it. It's like, it's helpful. It's fun. It's really cool. And to all those people that are listening to this, like I just wanted to say thank you. Cause this is why I do it, is for, these people. It's a lot of fun for me to do this. It's always a fun exercise, but it's also just good to promote good conversation, good times with all of the people that I enjoy spending time with. So if you keep listening, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to keep doing this. This is why I do it. Another thing, too, I've had a lot of people ask me about the shirts since I released the second wave of shirts. The way I'm officially going to do it at this point, I'm just going to have a list on my phone of if this person wants a shirt, I'll put them down. If that number gets to 15, then I will order new shirts, because that gets it down to, like, I think $16 or $17 a shirt, and I will send them out to people. So if you want a shirt, let me know, and I'll add it onto the list, and that's just how we're going to do it from now on. Also, as I was saying right when JB kind of logged back on here, we're going to do more consistent episodes this fall in general, but especially this summer, because we've got the NFL and Notre Dame are both coming up. So I'm going to be doing a lot of different previews on all of the AFC, NFC, but then also Notre Dame offense, defense schedule overall. JB, you want to give me would it be jinxing it if I asked you what do you think Notre Dame's record is going to be in the regular season this year?
I won't speak to that. I don't want to hear the comments that'll come my way from other folks that we speak to. So I'm going to abstain from that one. But I'll echo what you were saying and what others had said to you as a speaker on behalf of the folks saying that we appreciate the podcast. So appreciate you doing this, Steve, and could not be happier to be a part of it.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I'd like to. This went pretty well. I'd like to think that we can't find some other movies to talk about in the future. We got Doomsday coming up. I mean, that's a couple months away, but you know what? I will be seated for both of those movies.
It's already on the calendar, though. That's the thing. It's already on the calendar.
There we go. All right, guys. Thank you for listening so much to the S3 podcast. Not sponsored by anybody, so we're not brought to you by anybody. But you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else you can get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back soon.